Hey everyone, and welcome to AMC Movie Talk. Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm Crystal Kennedy, and this is the show where we bring you the day's biggest movie news, and of course we give you the insight into what it all means. Joining me, as always, is AMC's editor-in-chief, Mr. John Campea.
Greetings and salutations. Good morning, Crystal. Today is Hangover Part 3 day. I'm going to go to the premiere tonight. I'm so looking forward to it. My one prayer, as I said quietly as I woke up to the sun coming over the horizon, dear God, please don't let this movie suck as bad as number 2 did. That's my prayer.
And also joining us today is Associate Editor at AMC, Miss Amy Rose Eisenbach.
Hello, guys. Hope you had a nice weekend.
We did. We're going to start with this. The opening weekend numbers are in, and by any definition, the new Star Trek Into Darkness is a hit. The film made just over $70 million domestically on its opening weekend, with a total of $84 million. When counting its Thursday opening numbers, which makes it almost even with the opening weekend numbers for last Star Trek movie in 2009. This makes Star Trek the third highest opening weekend box office of 2013, behind number 1, Iron Man 3, and number 2, Oz the Great and Powerful. John, how happy should Paramount be with the opening for Star Trek Into Darkness?
Not very. They should be. I think the better word for how Paramount should feel about its opening is relieved. Because this obviously, it didn't bomb. Mm-hmm. But it didn't meet expectations. Here's the thing. Star Trek Into Darkness is a great movie. It's a great movie. It's so much fun. It's entertaining. It's wild. It's a thrill ride. It's great. The first one was also great, had a lot of momentum, should have done a lot more, but it didn't. It came in actually just a little bit behind, just barely behind, what the original Star Trek film did. By original, I mean the 2009 film. And here's the thing, it's going to get crushed next weekend at the box office. Because think about this, the first Star Trek film that J.J. Abrams did, it opened in it's opened one week, and then its following week, it had to contend with Angels and Demons, which is not actually a huge blockbuster juggernaut. The following week after that, Night at the Museum 2, also not a huge blockbuster juggernaut. That's what it had to deal with. You know what this Star Trek has to deal with this week? Fast and the Furious 6 and The Hangover Part 3.
Yeah.
So its box office is going to take a dive. Now listen, this film made 3, as great of a movie as it is, and it deserved to do better, but Paramount made 3 critical mistakes with this Star Trek Into Darkness that I think would have allowed it to have done a lot better on its opening weekend than it did. The first critical mistake they made was they did not promote the cast of the film. Zachary Quinto, it's been 4 years since the last Star Trek movie. Why has Paramount not put him in something to kind of increase his profile to help the next Star Trek movie? Christopher Pine has not done a lot of films in the last 4 years. I mean, yeah, he's done stuff like People Like Us, which was a nice little film.
This Means War.
He did This Means War. Wah, wah. But like, he literally had the time to shoot about 8 films. Why did Paramount not put him in something a little bit more high profile to increase his profile for the next film? They completely underutilized and ignored this cast instead of promoting him. The second big mistake they made with this is that they waited 4 years to make it. I said from day one, you have to strike while the iron is hot. They should have come out with another Star Trek film in 2011, at the latest 2012. And then some people sit around and say, oh, no, it's better to take your time and do it right. How long do you think it takes to write a script? Joss Whedon banged out the script for Cabin in the Woods in a weekend. He talks about how him and his buddy went away for the weekend, wrote the script for Cabin in the Woods. Now, I'm not saying every film can be written.
He's Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
Not everybody is Joss Whedon. Not everybody can bang out a script in 2 or 3 days. But I'm sorry, it doesn't take 2 years. And look, as much as I love Star Trek Into Darkness, this wasn't the Shakespeare of scripts. I mean, it's not like the script was this huge masterpiece that was carefully crafted over 2 years. This film should have come out a lot earlier. They waited 4 years. It lost some of its momentum. It could have done better if it came out earlier. But the third biggest mistake they made with this, and this isn't a teaser or a spoiler anymore because this is public knowledge. It's listed on IMDb. Let's make Khan a secret. Let's make it a secret. Why would you use Khan? You use Khan in the first place because he is the single best villain that Star Trek has ever had, and you're going to hide the fact that he's there. that it was one of the most stupid moves they could have possibly made. They should have been trumpeting this. They should have been making this a big deal in the marketing. They should have been capitalizing on the popularity of the character. But no, let's do what Cloverfield did and not show the monster. No, that was a ridiculous move. Look, I'm not saying give away everything about a movie in marketing. I'm not saying that. But if you're putting Khan in it, tell people you're putting Khan in it. And I think these three things equal to, I'm sorry, I think this has to be looked at as big as these numbers are, I think this has to be looked at as a slightly disappointing result for Paramount and Star Trek Into Darkness, because this film deserved better, because it is a really good, fun film. You should run out and see it. Amy Rose, your thoughts. Should we be happy about these results, or is this too low, or do you think it exceeded expectations?
Well, Paramount was predicting 100 million. So right there already it proves that it's below. Now, naturally, studios are hopeful, and I think this is just another reminder that I think this geek world that I'm such a part of and love is a lot larger than it is, because Star Trek is a niche audience. Sure, Chris Pine and Zoe Saldana and all these actors are hot, and J.J. Abrams, but again, it is still a little more niche, opposed to Star Wars, where it really brings a lot more generations in. So I do think that, you know, it's not a failure by any means. It made solid money, but I did kind of anticipate it to be a larger opening as well. And on the con point, I mean, how excited were we when we saw that, you know, magazine, who was it, Entertainment Weekly or whatever?
Yeah, EW.
And it like said it was con, and then they took it down real quick, and that is the momentum they should have really built on, because we were so excited about that. We're like, well, it's not confirmed yet, but we both from day one were like, it's con. And if they really were smart with the whole misdirection and trying to throw us off their scent, they really could have capitalized on that, but instead they just kind of let it die down, and then the big reveal was in the film, and by that point we're like, yeah, we know. So I think that they didn't play that right. The marketing campaign I thought was fine. I mean, they released a lot of character posters, and I thought, you know, it was pretty great. But I do agree that 4 years is kind of a long time for a film like this, and I really, really liked it. I think the diehard fans were a little more, I don't know, difficult to please on this one, but overall I think it was a great film, and this just reconfirmed all my hopes that JJ is going to do a great job with Star Wars. I think he's going to do great with the property.
Agreed.
All right. The ending of Iron Man 3 has led a lot of people to speculate if Tony Stark will be part of Avengers 2. And if he is, will he be Iron Man, or will he be just Tony Stark? In a recent interview with our friends at IGN, Joss Whedon addressed the question with the following. Well, I feel like in Iron Man 3, even though he said, I've changed, he blew up his remote suits. But I don't think anybody thinks he doesn't have one anymore. The question is, the Avengers are called, does he show up? And the answer is yes. Amy Rose, what do you think Whedon's answer suggests?
Oh, yes, he's coming back. I mean, at the end of Iron Man 3, by this point you should have seen it, so spoilers are all fair game, people. Pepper almost died. He almost died. Like, it was a really intense film, and, it's really been great watching their relationship evolve on screen. They're definitely one of my favorite couples in the comic book world, because she's not this damsel in distress. She really stepped into her power. She's intelligent. She's beautiful. And that was kind of Tony's way of saying, hey, babe, I got your back. Let's see what happens, and basically saying goodbye to it. But we all know he is completely obsessed with just creation, and he's brilliant. He's a tech genius, and obviously this is not his suits are not all gone. I mean, not to mention he's a team player. He's Iron Man. So if the Avengers calls back, I definitely think we'll be seeing him not only as Tony Stark, but as Iron Man. And I think Joss just confirmed that. I love you, Joss. Let's do this.
Yeah, I think the whole notion that people thought, oh no, they'll just have him come back as Tony Stark. You're completely certifiably insane if you ever thought that Avengers 2 would happen without Iron Man there. I mean, that's just crazy talk. He is one of the key centerpieces of the biggest blockbuster success they've ever had. They're not just going to have Tony Stark there without it. There were a couple of things here. Clearly, number one, Joss Whedon is suggesting obviously he's going to have the suit. There's still a suit. But even if there's not a suit, he was on the Mark 42. He can build an Iron Man suit in a weekend, the time it takes Joss Whedon to write a script, apparently. So he can bang out these suits really quick. So and he probably has one in reserve anyway. And of course, if the Avengers called, he's going to be there. But something that did strike me as interesting. Notice he just kept talking. I saw the whole interview. They just kept talking about Tony Stark and Iron Man, Tony Stark and Iron Man. Never mentioned Robert Downey Jr. Never mentioned Robert Downey Jr. So they're going to have Iron Man. They're going to have Tony Stark. They're going to have him in the suit, and they will do it whether or not he's back. Because we're not going to go into it now. Obviously, there's a huge negotiations and war going on between Robert Downey Jr. and Marvel right now over how many ridiculous amount of money that Robert Downey Jr. thinks he earned and how much he thinks he deserves, even though, hey, Marvel resurrected your career. You owe everything to Marvel, buddy. But whether or not Robert Downey Jr. is there, we're going to see Tony Stark. We're going to see Iron Man. It is time for buy and sell. Here's what's going to happen here. We got a couple of other issues in the world of movie news in front of us. Chris Lee's got them listed off in front of her. She's going to read them off to us, and Amy Rose and I are simply going to say whether we buy it or sell it. So, Chris Lee, what do we got?
Staying on the topic of Avengers 2 and Joss Whedon, in the same interview, Whedon discussed the siblings Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and the role they'll play in upcoming films, saying the following: "You know they had a rough beginning. They're interesting to me because they sort of represent the part of the world that wouldn't necessarily agree with the Avengers. So they're not there to make things easier. I'm not putting any characters in the movie that will make things easier. John, we know the characters will be in the movie, but buy or sell, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch will be on the team in Avengers 2.
I sell it. I'm actually starting to get the feeling they may be villains in the film. I'm still not completely on board with the fact that they're using Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, because if you take away the fact that they're mutants and take away the fact that they're Magneto's offspring, that takes away a lot of their interest for me. But it does sound more and more like they may be used as adversaries instead. So for me right now, I got to sell it.
I'm also going to sell basically by what, he explained with that, like what Joss said. If they're not going to make things easier and, the Avengers are banding together, I think it makes it very apparent that they're going to be the opposition opposed to. And I mean, even though they might not call out the fact that they're Magneto's children, they can still do a little nod and mutant and all these other fun terms that we could discuss.
They can't say mutant.
They could say other things.
Right, but they can't say
They
mutant.
could say other things that they could
mutant.
get along, a little nod that we know where they came from and still get the point across. So I think it'd be cool for them to be against the Avengers.
I don't care who's in it at this point. I just want more Avengers. Just bring them on. Red 2 won't hit AMC theaters until July 19th, but Summer Entertainment is already working on their next installment. The studio has signed Red and Red 2 screenwriters John and Eric Colbert to pen Red 3. Amy Rose, buy or sell moving on Red 3 before Red 2 even opens?
I'm going to sell it. I really liked the first Red, and I'm looking forward to the sequel, but sometimes, as we've learned, sequels are not nearly as good, and sometimes they're even as bad. So I think this is kind of jumping the gun a little bit. Once I see Red 2, if I really like it, hopefully I will, then I'm all for continuing the trilogy. But I think it's getting a little trigger happy.
I'm going to buy this. The first Red was a nice little modest success, and the reason I buy this so much is because moving forward on Red 3 right now tells me the studio likes what they see in Red 2. Yeah. Now, and of course, the fact that they're writing the script and developing right now doesn't necessarily mean they can't just pull the plug instantly if Red 2 bombs. So I like the idea of getting a head start. So yeah, for me, it's a buy.
As many of you know, a movie version of the hit game series Assassin's Creed is on the way with Michael Fassbender, who played Magneto in X-Men First Class, starring and producing. The project has been just given an official release date of May 22nd for the Memorial Day weekend. John, buy or sell Assassin's Creed getting the Memorial Day weekend spot?
I buy this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's really happening. It's really happening. It's not just theoretical. It's really happening. This is great. But also because it's a summer film. They're opening it like 3 weeks away from Avengers, which is very, very smart. Right now, there's no other film scheduled to open on that weekend, although Star Wars may jump in there, which would absolutely kill Assassin's Creed. But right now, I think this is a really good move, so I buy it.
I'm also going to buy, I just think this really shows the kind of confidence they have in this project. Assassin's Creed lends itself so well to a movie. It's such a great game. Michael Fassbender is one of the best working actors out there today. And yeah, I just think it says, let's go on a hot weekend because we got a hot property. So I'm really excited.
All right, folks, well, before we get to Mailbag, thank you so much, Amy Rose, for being here today.
Pleasure.
Where can people find you on Twitter?
At Amy Rosie, AMIROSIE.
All right, thanks a lot, Amy Rose. Well, listen, folks, it's that time of the show for Mailbag. Listen, if you've got a topic or a question you'd like me to address on the show, you can email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. Just send in your questions every single day. We pick a few out to address on the show. Chrisley's got a bunch of them picked out of the mailbag. So, Chrisley, what do we got?
I do. Ronald Hurst writes, I've been watching the show for a couple of weeks and I'm enjoying it a lot. I would like to know if there is a potential for a sequel to Tim Burton Dark Shadows, and if so, would the entire cast come back?
Thanks a lot for the question. I don't think there's any chance they're going to do this. Tim Burton, first of all, on his own, is not really into all that often doing sequels. It's happened, but it's not his regular gig. But also, it had, I think, a critic rating in the 30s. It had what's listed as a negative audience rating, so people didn't really like it. It didn't do too bad at the box office. It made a little bit of money, not much, but it made a little bit. But the fact that the critics hated it so much, and honestly, between you and me, I thought the movie was just dreadful. I thought it was terrible. And the audience generally didn't like it, so no, I don't think we're going to see a sequel.
Jason Martirosian writes, "Hey guys, first of all, you are the best show on YouTube. Secondly, I want to ask you a question. Who do you think is a better filmmaker, Christopher Nolan or Paul Thomas Anderson? For me, Anderson is a little bit better, so what do you think?"
This is one of those what I call knife in the back questions, where it's like no matter what answer I give, half of the population is going to want to kill me, no matter what I say. So this is a no-win situation, but I'm going to tell you what I think anyway. When you're talking about these two filmmakers, you're talking about two exceptional filmmakers. With Paul, you got films like Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love. I mean, he's such a great star. Really brings just the best out of the actors that he works with. Now, of course, though, when you talk about Christopher Nolan, forget about the Batman films. I mean, obviously, you got the Batman films, but put those aside. You got Insomnia, The Prestige, Inception, and Memento. I mean, this guy just knows how to direct great film. So who's better? All right, here's my 2 cents worth. I think out of all the films that these two guys have made, I think the guy who has made the best film is Paul Anderson. I think There Will Be Blood is the best single film out of all the films these guys have made. Not to mention he's directed the best performance, of course, in There Will Be Blood. I mean, an Oscar-winning performance in that film, so with Daniel Day-Lewis. But overall, I'm going to lean towards Christopher Nolan. When you look at the overall body of work, he's got a lot of diversity in his work. Films like The Prestige, Memento, and Insomnia, and all the. I mean, this guy has just exceeded incredible quality with every single outing. I think, like I said, Paul has the highest peak with There Will Be Blood, but I think overall, right now, I'll go with Christopher Nolan. So that's my answer. Please don't kill me.
That's a tough one.
It is.
James Bond writes,
"Oh boy.
Hey guys, I love your show. Here's my question. If The Man of Steel lives up to the hype, do you think it could be an Oscar nomination?" Careful, this is James Bond.
Yeah, there's this, I think, negative and wrong perception out there that, comic book movies don't get nominated for Best Picture just because they're comic book movies. No, I think that's a very safe, let me wrap up in my little blankie kind of answer, because that's the way I want to see the world. I don't think that's true. I think, The Dark Knight, it actually won a number of Oscars, including one of the acting Oscars, of course, for Heath Ledger. And I think it was just a couple of mistakes away from being nominated for Best Picture. As a matter of fact, if it had been one of the years where they had like more than 5 nominations, because now you can get anywhere between 5 and 10 nominations. But in the year that The Dark Knight was out, I believe was the last year that they had a strict rule of just 5 nominees for Best Picture. And I think if it had been 8 nominees or 9 like this past year, I believe Dark Knight would have gotten one of those nominations. But even in just 5, I think it was just a couple of mistakes. And the film had some mistakes. It was just a couple of mistakes away from being nominated anyway. So absolutely, if Man of Steel is as good as we're all hoping it will be, well, let's put it this way. If Man of Steel is as good as I'm hoping it'll be the greatest film of all time in the history of cinema. But it's not going to be that good. But if it really fulfills its potential, yeah, I believe there is a legitimate shot that it could be like an Oscar contending film. But obviously we won't know until we see the film ourselves.
Jack Adams writes, "Hey John, love the show and look forward to procrastinating with it every day. Here's my question. In one of the Man of Steel trailers, we see a young Clark Kent with his dog running up next to him. Then later in the trailer, you see a Clark Kent around 20 to 30 years later, and he is at the docks with none other than what looks like the same dog. My theory is the dog seen in the trailer both times could be Krypto the Superdog. It could be cool to see Superman's best friend in the movie, but is it at all a possibility that the dog could be making the slightest appearance in the movie?" I didn't ask the question.
No.
Jack Adams.
No.
Did I say something wrong?
No. It is not Krypto the Superdog. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If in some strange warped bizarro universe, they actually put Krypto, the Superdog, in this movie that I'm throwing completely out the window. Every conceived perception I had of what this movie might be. Dear God, please, no.
Ilglaz Demirci writes, "Hey guys, love your show and have a question. Do you ever think a movie that concentrates on animals could be popular once again for adults? For example, The Big Year. I know it wasn't a hit, but it was successful. So do you think it is useless to do any movie rather than action comedy and superhero movies?"
Let me correct a couple things first. The notion that only action comedy or superhero films can be successful that's whoever is telling you that, my friend, is spouting nonsense to you. Let's just look at last year. Just some of the Best Picture nominees of last year. Les Mis, mega hit, over 100 million domestically. Zero Dark 30, mega hit, over 100 million domestically. Argo, mega hit, over 100 million domestically. Lincoln, mega hit, over 100 million dollars domestically. Life of Pi, mega hit, over. None of them comedy, action, or sci-fi films. So right there goes that notion out the window. You also mentioned The Big Year with Steve Martin, Jack Black, and I think Owen Wilson was in that as well. That it was a success. No, it wasn't. It was a huge bomb. It was a massive bomb. It roughly cost them, between making the film and marketing, cost them around $60 million to make that film. I believe it made $7 million. It lost a lot of money. But that being said, in the same year that came out, We Bought a Zoo with Matt Damon. That
Such a great movie.
Made some pretty decent bank for the type of film that it was. I mean, it's not really an animal movie. Water for Elephants was box office wise was a successful film. Babe. No, I know we're getting outside the scope. But I think making a film that focuses on animals is tricky in and of itself, because you're making a film about an animal. So that's a hard thing to do anyway. So, but I think there is precedence, like We Bought a Zoo and others, that if you make a good movie and you market it well with a great script, it like anything else can work. Absolutely, it can work. So while The Big Year is not a great example of that, yes, it can absolutely work. And no, they don't have to be big hits. They don't have to be just comedy or action or superhero films. And last year just proves that.
I just have to correct you. It's We Bought a Zoo!
We Bought a Zoo!
Every time you say it. Okay. Adrian Cortez writes, "Hey guys, y'all are awesome. Can't get enough of y'all. I've been finally had a chance to watch this week's vids on a 70-inch TV.
Best way to watch it.
Anyway, I just want to say I agree with you almost 98.45782% of the time, John. Anyway, my question is, do you think we will ever see Apocalypse on the big screen? Of course, I'm speaking of the X-Men baddie. I mean, if they're going to bring out a larger-than-life baddie like Thanos, then why not Apocalypse?"
I've always said, the X-Men villain, I mean, obviously, besides Magneto, who, is quintessential with anything to do with X-Men, the one villain I've always wanted to see is Saba Noor. I want to see Apocalypse. He is the guy. I want to see, whether or not you do a movie version of Age of Apocalypse, which even more so for me personally, I know there are lots of people who disagree, I like the Age of Apocalypse storyline as the greatest comic book storyline ever, even more than, like, say, the Nightfall series. Now, a lot of people disagree with me, and they're both awesome, so I'm not going to argue about it. But I'm just saying, for me personally, Apocalypse is an incredible villain, especially when you start looking into his history, like with Ozymandias, and you go back into his formative years in Egypt and things like that. He's just an incredible, badass, terrifying villain. I think far more so than Thanos or a lot of others. So I would give my left arm, not literally, but I would give up a lot to see Apocalypse in a good X-Men film, preferably in an Age of Apocalypse. But any way we can get Saba Noor, I'm totally on board. Well, listen, folks, that'll do it for us. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. But listen, before you do anything else, stop what you're doing, take a second, and click that subscribe button. A lot of people ask me, John, how can we support this show? Well, we don't need money. We just need to click that thumbs up button or click the subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of movie news and, of course, our daily AMC Movie Talk show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/AMC Theaters. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/AMC Theaters. If you'd like an audio-only version of this episode, look in the description of this video and you'll find links to our iTunes and our Stitcher Radio so you can listen to us on your commute to work. Go on over to www.amctheaters.com to get all your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information so you can go out and see Star Trek or Iron Man or Great Gatsby, or get your advance tickets for Fast and Furious 6, The Hangover Part 3. This is a great time to be a movie fan. And once again, click that subscribe button. I want to thank, as always, our very lovely host, Miss Crystal Kennedy.
Always a good time.
The now departed Miss Amy Rose Eisenbach, who is the associate editor of movie news here at AMC Theaters. And listen, the most important part of the show is not what we have to say. That's irrelevant. It's what you have to say. Make sure you jump down to the comment section of this video and leave your thoughts on any or all of the topics we discuss here today. So thanks again for joining us. And until tomorrow, my name is John Campia for AMC Movie News. Bye-bye.